Good morning. Happy Saturday. T is still sleeping, so I'm going to be we call it Comcast. We're getting that fixed. T had to sit on hold for about 39 days. That's why it took so long. So, we were talking about self-sabotage, procrastination, approach avoidance, and, have you ever had a situation where you set a goal and you started to make strides towards that goal, and then all of the sudden, you just went back into your old patterns. Like let's say you have problems with getting into a relationship, and you run into somebody that you really think is going to be a person that, you might get along with. And just when you're about ready to go talk to them, you shut it down and you don't do it. Or, you start that new eating program and then all of a sudden somebody offers you cake, or you went out last night and you had a couple of cocktails when you know that if you do that, it's going to be very difficult in order to lose the weight. There's a million different examples of this, right? Where we start to make progress and then all of a sudden we go back to our old patterns. So why does that happen, and how can we eliminate that? So first of all, always remember that part of this is just that you've been conditioned to do something for so long that, you got to break that. You got to break that conditioning. That's why, with regards to losing weight, a fast is a good idea. Not because you're going to lose weight faster. You're not. You'll lose weight faster, but then some will come back. It's because it interrupts your pattern. So understand, one thing is, this is just conditioning. So you can condition yourself, we're conditioning ourselves all the time. We are constantly conditioning ourselves or being conditioned by commercials, by television, by everything around us. So understand that you're not doing anything new. So you can always take the opportunity to recondition yourself. And secondly, whenever there's an approach avoidance, why do we do that? We do it for fear, but remember always that your brain has a positive intent for everything that it does. Whenever it stops you from doing something, it's doing it for a positive reason. So like, let's say it's with weight, it's because it feels like you're giving up something, right? So that's why it does that. That's why we talk so much about that eating plan, where you're changing what you're eating. You're going from eating junk to eating healthy things. You stop digging your grave with your teeth, and you can eat as much of those healthy things as you want. That makes it a lot easier to make that transition, because your brain sees that as good. Oh, good. We're going to live longer. We're going to live healthier by eating this way, and there's no limit as to how much we can eat. Much easier to do. Let's say it's with regards to relationships. That, you go forward with regards to a relationship, or you start a new relationship and you really like the person, and then, you sabotage it. You do something you're not supposed to do, you say something you're not supposed to say, or you simply just stop calling. So why is that? Well, remember again, your brain has a positive intent. It's trying to protect you, always. We're always trying to avoid pain and gain pleasure. And when your brain does something like that, encourages you to do something that is self-sabotaging, it's for a reason. So one of the things to do is to first figure out what that reason is. Why is it that it's stopping you from going forward with the relationship? Chances are you were hurt in some relationship before. Chances are you're afraid of getting injured. You're afraid, there's something there, right? So the first thing to do is to try to find out that lesson and write it down. Learn the lesson and thank your brain. Thank you very much for giving me this lesson. Thank you for protecting me in this fashion. But then ask yourself, what are all the things that I'm going to gain if I'm able to go forward and have a successful relationship? And the way to do this is to write it all down, right? To put it all down on paper. And then ask yourself, what is it going to cost me if I don't change this conditioning pattern? And then go out 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. That's the way to get leverage, right? Is to think about, where am I going to be in 15 years or 20 years if I don't change this conditioning pattern? Knowing that I can change the pattern at any time. And, feel those feelings and get that leverage of what it's going to be like if you don't change this. Now, interrupt your pattern. Remember, these are the steps to creating lasting change that we talked about. Number one, make a decision, learn the lesson. Number two, get leverage. And you get leverage by figuring out, what are all the things I'm going to gain if I do change this pattern? So let's say it's losing weight. What are all the things I'm going to gain? Well, how is it going to feel? How am I going to feel? Imagine that your goal was to lose 60 pounds and you decide that you can lose a pound a day. That's it. Or you decide I'm going to lose, 2 pounds a week. All right. How am I going to feel in 6 months with 20 less pounds or 60 less pounds or 10 less pounds? Imagine how much more energy. Imagine how much better you're going to look when you look at yourself in the mirror. Imagine how proud you are going to be about yourself. Imagine how proud your family's going to be. Imagine how proud your kids are going to be of you after you do all this stuff. And then, figure out the bad stuff. What happens if I don't do this? And don't just think about how you're going to feel because you're going to be upset with yourself that you haven't made these changes, but think about the the health consequences. What can happen to me if I don't change these ways? There can be heart disease. There can be strokes. There can be, pile it on. All right. What am I going to gain and what is it going to cost me? And then feel those feelings. And then, put yourself up 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. Which one of you do you want to be? Do you want to be the one that doesn't lose the weight and doesn't do all the things? Do you want to be the one that doesn't go forward with the relationship? Do you want to be the one that doesn't quit smoking? Imagine yourself on your deathbed. But, by the way, when you die from emphysema, chronic bronchitis, you actually drown. You actually drown in your own bodily fluids. I know that because I watched my grandmother do it. It's a bad way to go. So put that up. Is that how you want this to happen? Is that the person you want to be? Is that how you want to go? Then put up what happens if you make the change. Okay? And then write all that down and feel those feelings. So now you should have enough leverage. So now what do? We got to interrupt the pattern. Well, you remember we talked one time about an erasure technique. And this is a really good neurolinguistic programming method in order to change your relationships to an event. So what you do is you see yourself self-sabotaging and you visualize it. And if you think you don't visualize, we all visualize, okay? It's just some people visualize very quickly, and that's why their conscious mind can't see the pictures. But everybody sees pictures in their mind. So if you think, well, I don't visualize, then just feel it. Then just feel what's going on. As you're visualizing this event, scramble it. Run it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and see it go into black and white and see the people change pictures and sizes and see the language coming out of their mouth become like Mickey Mouse and just do back and forth and back and forth. It's just like you're scratching a record, all right? And you need to scratch that record like crazy so that you can get rid of it and put on a new record. What we tend to do is we tend to not interrupt our pattern, and we try to instill a new pattern on top of the old pattern without getting rid of the old pattern. And it doesn't work all that well. It can work, but it's a lot harder. If you interrupt the pattern by scrambling that old record, now your brain can't use that record, so it throws it away, so there's an empty space. And in the empty space, you can create the new pattern. So you don't always have to do this. And a lot of times leverage does scramble the pattern, to be honest. If you get enough leverage, then your pattern is scrambled and you won't need to do this. But go through the process anyway, because it can't hurt, it can only help. So run it back and forth and do it in hyperspeed and see it in black and white. And then I take it and then I put it behind me and then I throw it far away and then I throw it into the sun. And then that's a way to make it all go away. Okay, so now you've got an empty space. Now you've got a blank space in your brain for a new record. So what do? So now you put yourself in a peak state. We know how to do that, right? Physiology. We put ourselves in a peak state, and then we see ourselves accomplishing that outcome. And then we feel great at the same time. See yourself following through, feel great. See yourself following through, feel great. And then go forward in your life. Visualize all of these changes happening, the domino effect as a result of this one thing that you did. So feel great and think about 5 days, think about 10 days, think about 30 days, think about 40 days. If it's losing weight, think about people coming up to you and going, congratulations, you've lost all this weight, you look amazing. If it's the relationship, think about the relationship blooming. Think about all these great things happening. And if the relationship, and don't worry, if the relationship doesn't happen to work out, it won't matter because you will have interrupted this pattern and showed your brain that this is a good thing, not a bad thing. So even if the relationship doesn't work, you'll learn those lessons and then move forward because you'll have instilled a new conditioning pattern. So the other thing is to understand that self-sabotage, we all do it, and it's just a tendency. It's just a conditioning pattern. That's all it is. It's not, oh, I'm born this way. It's not, no. It's your brain is simply trying to protect you from this particular event. And so it's giving you fear so that you avoid that, so that you don't get hurt or because it thinks it's a self-sacrifice. So don't think that this is a conditioning pattern that you cannot overcome. You can absolutely overcome it. And those steps are the steps to do it. Number one, find the positive intent of your brain. Why is it that your brain is getting you to avoid this particular step? Why do you have approach avoidance here? Learn that lesson. Step number two, interrupt your pattern. Erase your technique. And at the same time, get leverage, right? We want to get leverage and then interrupt the pattern. How do you get leverage? Think of all the things that it's going to cost you over your lifetime if you don't change this pattern. And then think of everything that you're going to gain if you do change this pattern. Do your erasure technique and then put yourself in a peak physiology and see yourself following through, and each time feel great as you go through each step of whatever it is that you want to accomplish. Losing the weight, quitting smoking, going forward on that relationship, whatever it is. And see yourself going 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, and do it again and again and again. Condition yourself multiple times a day. And, that should be enough. But if it's not, don't panic. It's just conditioning. It's just you've been conditioned the other way for so long that sometimes it takes a little while for you to go back. You wouldn't, if a piano has been sitting there and it's been out of tune for years, you can't just show up and tune it once and then it stays tuned. The person that tunes it has to come back and tune it every day for a week or several weeks, depending upon how long it's been out of tune. It's been so used to being in this pattern that's bad and wrong that it tends to go back there, and we're no different. So if all of a sudden you find yourself going back and doing these old patterns, don't panic. It's okay. That just means you've been conditioned to do that. Go through the process again and focus on that long term. What are you going to gain? I'll gain. Use these steps, and you can interrupt any self-sabotage that you have and condition any new pattern. Our brain is programmable. It's being programmed all the time. Advertisers are great at it. Watch any beer commercial and you will understand how to program a brain. We can do that to ourselves. We can program ourselves so that we can move forward in whatever direction that we want. And it doesn't take that long, and it doesn't take that much effort. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Let's take care of each other out there. We're going to get through this. Thanks for watching.